Well, and there's a balance that we're trying to manage, because I think that when you're dealing with a certification, you want to maintain that validity of the program,
Security is
and so
important.
security, but you want to make it easy for the customer, and it's more than just I need to protect their credit card that they're paying for here.
Hello, my name is Ruben Garcia, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Certiverse. And this is Valid Questions. Welcome. And today we have Todd Hopkins, Vice President of Operations and Product for Certification Partners. So Todd's organization, they've been developing a lot of certification exams. We talk a lot about, we have a lot of different topics here on Valid Questions. We love to talk about innovation. We love to talk about technology. We love to talk about just general industry trends. So today, Todd is here to talk about innovation and content. What are our students looking for from a certification perspective, and anything else around that topic. So Todd, please introduce yourself, and thank you for being here, from coming all the way from Phoenix to be here. We really appreciate that.
You bet. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here in Chicago instead of in the hot Phoenix area right now. It's almost 100 degrees already, so it's kind of crazy. But I'm with Certification Partners. Certification Partners owns and manages the CIW and ICT certification programs, or certificate programs with the ICT. I've been working with the CIW program for about 20 years, and came from a networking background before that. So been in the IT space for quite some time. I'm really excited about the CIW certifications and that ICT program. We're a vendor neutral certification program, which means that while we may profile specific vendors in their applications, we focus on the critical thinking, we focus on the foundational technology of whatever topic we're talking about, whether it's JavaScript or whether it's data analysis or whatever it might be. We take that foundational approach so that as an individual goes into those technology areas, they can then have that base that they'll need when they start hitting a vendor-specific certification pathway, and we help people get ready for those careers. Okay. And it's exciting. There's a lot of new things going on with certifications and with the technology.
So I would love to talk a little about your program, your brand, the certifications that you manage, because I think that you do something that's really unique within the industry. What really is pretty compelling in what CIW is doing, or certification partners are doing, is really where the space where you start the certification process. Yeah. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you're doing in that area, what you're doing with the K through 12 market, because I think you're very unique from that perspective. Yeah,
I think so too. And let's talk about a couple of those programs. So we start with our kids in pretty much the 5th grade. We've got some that are in 3rd or 4th grade that are taking some of the programs, but we start with that ICT program, which is essentially digital literacy. So we're going to talk about basic computing, communications, word processing, spreadsheets, those types of things, but it is all from a vendor neutral approach. We're going to profile specific vendors, that have a word processor or have spreadsheets or those types of things. But we're going to take those kids and we're going to give them that tool set to use technology in whatever they're doing, whether it's the math or the English or whatever it is. And then we're going to continue on with gaming and programming and a little bit of cybersecurity. The ICT program also has digital literacy or digital citizenship and global awareness aspects to it. And so what that does is that provides an introduction across the board to what is technology, because technology is in everything that we do. You go to the airport, you go to the store, you go to, you don't have to be in an IT company to be involved in technology. Everybody needs that. And so it starts those kids out to see, well, what do I like to do? Do I like to build websites? Do I want to be a programmer? Do I want to, go into cybersecurity? It gives them a good introduction to that. And one of the new things that we're doing this fall is we have an introduction to AI program that's coming out under that ICT brand. So again, it's introducing those 5th to 8th graders to that type of technology. Then you move into CIW, and CIW is more of that industry level career certification, getting you involved in the technologies that will start your career and help you move forward with that. So with that, we continue on with web development, web design, social media, digital marketing, and more cybersecurity, getting a little more in depth into that. And so those are some of the things that we have. But there's a difference between that CIW and ICT program. That ICT is that digital literacy. The CIW is that industry recognition that can get you a job, because you have those skills to be a programmer or use social media in a marketing aspect, or if you're a farmer, you need to analyze your data.
When I was in college and I was trying to find work and trying to understand where do I go, I didn't know that the concept of certification existed, right? That there's a way to prove your skills and your understanding of the technology that will help you in your career. So I think it's pretty interesting, right? I mean, I'd love to know if there's any overlap, or even if there isn't. I think that just students that have taken the ICT program later on can make that connection and go, you know what? Oh, I know all about this. I can get CIW certified, or I can get a different certification, right? But they understand the value of getting certified and can see a path.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and that's very important, is to understand that pathway. What is that educational pathway, or what is that career pathway? When I was in 5th grade, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought, oh, maybe I'll do this or maybe I'll do that. But our kids today, they consume this technology, and they think they're awesome at it. They think they know everything about it. They know how to consume it very, very well. So what we're trying to do is help them to be producers of it and help us to get to those next levels. So, in the 5th grade, they can come in and they can go through some of these ICT certificate programs. There's about a dozen of them, and they can see what they like. They can see how technology gets to be a part of anything that they're doing. And where do I go next with this? So yeah, if they like the programming aspect of it, there's a lot of things that they can do. They can start with gaming and the programming programs under ICT, and as they get into that high school age level, they can continue on with other programming, or we want to build some AI certifications in there under the CIW brand, not just that intro to AI. Because if we get them hooked in that, and they like that technology and they like building in that technology, well, what's the next step? That's a long ways from 5th to 8th grade to maybe a college degree or a career once they get out of high school. And so what is that pathway? And so there's a lot of things that flow through from that, starting with the ICT program. And we kind of did, we had a CIW. We've had CIW for a long time, and there's a lot of great things in there. But we were missing out. Some of those kids would come up and they weren't quite ready for some of the things that we were teaching. So it was important to move down into those lower grades to get them to build those producers. And to get them to think critically about what they want to do in their life and what problems they want to be able to solve.
I love that. I mean, I think it is really important, right? Because I think that we're, culturally, we consume content, we consume products, services, and stuff like that. And then, getting that mindset so that, kids understand that besides consuming that, there is a technology behind that, right? And if you can also be a producer, a creator, but you have to understand, what are those technologies, that there's, that there's a server in the back end, there's a platform that's serving the user interface, there's a media file,
yes,
right? And, there's, writing code for those games requires.
Well, and someone may be interested in, I want to code games and I want to make games. And that is a whole industry that you can get into. And someone may say, you know what, I'm not really interested in that. I want to take a digital marketing approach. But there's some similar things that all of those jobs need to have in your tool belt. And so with CIW, you can start at the introductory level, and then, this is the direction I want to go, and you can build your own path, because our certifications aren't one big, huge certification anymore. We've broken them up so that there can be multiple career pathways that you're going through. Everybody needs to know a little bit about social media and how that works. And how do you use it in a business standpoint,
Let's talk about something, because we touched on that, and really, one of the areas that we want to help you is helping you launch these new certifications, get them out to market very quickly. But let's talk about trends. What do you see right now that, where there are gaps, where there's an opportunity, where there's a series or catalog of certifications that you feel need to be out in the market and that you're supporting?
Yeah, trends are very interesting, and we've had a lot of different conversations. You and I have had conversations. I've been talking with community colleges and universities and our K-12 customers, and hearing what they've been doing. Also been doing some little bit of research, and AI is a big thing. Artificial intelligence, machine learning. And when you do those things, when you look at those technologies, then data analytics comes very short behind that, and digital marketing, because they all use similar aspects in accomplishing what they need to. But yeah, we see a lot in artificial intelligence and machine learning that we need to be working towards. And you got to move quickly, because there's a lot of people out there trying to figure it out themselves. And how can we help that pathway be a little bit smoother for those that want to go down it?
Okay.
They work hard with that, but those are kind of the main areas. AI, machine learning, digital marketing, data analytics, and security is always a big topic.
Tell us a little bit about how you see how you're designing, I guess, the certification, or the at the ITC level, and also at the the K through 12 level, and also at the professional level. What's the difference? What's your vision around some of that?
Okay. Yeah. We all want to look for, if you're going to have a certification, the purpose of getting a certification is to help you get a job or advance in your career. So we look at jobs. What are the jobs? Where's there a lack of employees for a particular responsibility? And we see that there's a lot of new things coming in AI, and AI is going to be in every industry. I mean, we see it in the automobile industry, where they're got autonomous cars. That's AI. They need to have machine learning, because they need to know how to improve, and those types of things. You're going to have that in agriculture. All of those things are important. So as we look at a certification, we look at those various jobs, but then what do those individuals really need to know to perform on that job? And so those are the things that we need. And that's, I think, one of the areas that your platform really helps us in, that is, as we define what those things are, and as we research and figure out how multiple jobs may work into a particular certification, but it will help multiple areas. Your platform helps us in creating not only the objectives, but the items that we need for that. And so bringing in subject matter experts to participate in that, people that are already in that industry saying, I really wish that people knew this, or I really wish that I knew this when I started. It would have made things move much, much quicker and easier. And so bringing those individuals in, and the crowdsourcing that you have with your platform is a great facilitator of that.
Yeah.
And so that can help us move quicker in developing that exam, that certification process for folks. With ICT, it's similar. ICT is not really an industry career certificate program. It's more of getting us to the point of where we can sit for those certification exams and understand more of that higher level thinking. And so it brings those students along, but it gets them engaged. There's a lot that we do in our certifications, all of them. We're building in more of ethics and the legal issues and things that you need to be aware of, because that's important. Because once you get some information about somebody, you can use that for good or you can use it for not good.
Right.
And so how do you balance that? You know, when we teach people about web security, one of the best ways is they need to learn to hack so that they can protect against that. And that's kind of a challenge when you bring that up, because, oh, we don't want to create hackers. Well, how do they know how to protect their organization if they don't understand how that hacker's working? So
yeah, I think that's important to cover not just the technology, but also some of the other fundamental kind of aspects of it.
Yeah, well, and you do need to understand that legal aspect of it, because if we're in the United States, do we really care that the EU came out with GDPR? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you may have a customer over there, and you are now responsible to follow those laws. And so how do you work through that? And unless that's built into what you're learning, because it's not just learning Python, it's not just learning JavaScript or whatever programming language you want to learn, or data analysis. You need to understand what those are, because everybody, it's a world marketplace out there, even if you're just want to find people in Chicago.
You know, from my perspective, like our vision, and you know, we think about the candidate a lot, because you know, I've taken certification exams. Yeah. In my day, they were in testing centers, you know, but but you know, we think about like just reducing the friction that's required to take an exam, right? Because you know, we feel both the cost, right? Mm-hmm. Cost is a big mm-hmm. You know, it's a friction point, right? Because if you're taking an exam and it costs $250 versus $95, and you get certified, or $50, that's a big difference, right? You're opening up the market, and cost obviously, an exam has a lot of cost attributions to it. It has, you know, if you're taking it in a physical location, that's a much higher cost than if you're taking it online, and so forth. There's a lot of, so I think that plays a big factor in it. But also for us, like, it's important, you know, we're looking for how do we remove friction points so that we can ultimately get that exam, administered, mm-hmm. Both from a cost perspective and just an experience perspective.
And that's what I was thinking is the user experience is vital. I mean, you know, you go to a testing center, and I've done some of those, and you go in and you feel like you're, you know, in a fishbowl and everybody's watching you, and there's just a lot of stress involved with that. Mm-hmm. You know, did I set up the time right? Did I get there? Oh, there was an accident on the way, so now my mind's in a different space. Mm-hmm. And I may not have done as well as I thought I might have. So having it be able to, you know, someone can take it in their home, as long as they have a decent environment that can be private, so mm-hmm. that they can focus on that. That eliminates a lot of those friction points of, you know, the traffic or whatever it might be. And allows that individual, that candidate, to focus on what they need to share. And the more that we can make that available, and the easier we can make that available, and I know you guys are working on that type of thing, and I like mm-hmm. what I've seen from that. That makes it easier for that candidate to sit that exam, and eliminates those friction points that may be the difference between them being successful or not. Yeah. The other thing that you know, this just came to my mind, so I hope it doesn't cause too much. I have a son that's dyslexic, and being able to have certain accommodations, mm-hmm. not to give him anything that somebody else wouldn't have, but if he's reading a test question, he's going to have challenges with it that others that don't have that difficulty have. So how can we make remove some of those friction points? You know, he's gone through tutoring, and he's been able to overcome and have the tools that he needs to work better in that type of environment. But I know if I'm asking him questions face to face, I get a lot more out of him than if I ask him to write it down. Mm-hmm. Or if I ask him to read something that I've put together. And so I think that there's a lot of things that we could do to help candidates that may have those types of challenges in their life become easier. And how do we do that from a remote proctoring standpoint?
Yep.
I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I think that there's definitely an opportunity, to make it more equitable, to make the process more equitable. I mean, the reality is that, physical testing centers are not equitable, right? Because if you think about it, like I live in downtown Chicago, and if I need to go and take an exam, I schedule online, I walk 2 blocks, and I'm happy I take the exam, right? Mm-hmm. But if you live in the south side of Chicago, or the west side of Chicago, or if you live,
it's not that easy.
It's not that easy, right? You're now talking about a professional young person who needs to get that certification, mm-hmm. or needs to take that exam, and now they're driving in. If they take the metro or the L, mm-hmm.
or
if they drive in, they pay $25, and they might be running late to their appointment, and they mm-hmm. get a red one of those traffic tickets.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just not the same,
yeah.
right?
Or if they're in a country that they've got to drive hours.
Absolutely.
And how do you help them?
From my perspective, any friction point that you can reduce. You can remove out of the way is better for the candidate, yeah. right? And I think, and that's a really important focus. From my perspective, I feel like the industry really focuses on programs and the exam sponsors, mm-hmm. But there hasn't been a lot of focus on the test taker,
yeah,
right? The end user, and it's very blatant when you if you ever have to go schedule an exam, just the experience. It's so vast from anything else that you do today,
yeah.
in the rest of the world, right? If you want to like get a cab, it's like one button, right?
Yeah.
If you want to order, I don't know, whatever it is, pizza, buy something on Amazon or whatever it is online.
It's easy.
The friction point is just like and whereas I think our industry is a little bit behind on that, not a little bit, quite behind on it. Yeah. So, but we're
there's a balance that we're trying to manage, because I think that when you're dealing with a certification, you want to maintain that validity of the program,
security,
and so security, but you want to make it easy for the customer, mm-hmm. and it's more than just I need to protect their credit card that they're paying for here. I need to protect the exam items, and
mm-hmm.
and they need to protect their privacy, all those types of things. So yeah, there's a few things that we have to deal with in there, but there is a way to get there. Yep. And I think that as we work with the partnerships that we can make that happen.
On the content side, if our model is to help you create as much content as possible, so you can have a lot of forms, and so that you can reduce the level of security that you need to deliver these exams, right, and provide a better experience. So, you don't necessarily need a Brinks truck,
Yeah.
So, but I'd love to hear. So on the security side, so we talked a little bit about experience. Is there anything else that you think that would, that the industry could do a better job at?
I think moving a little bit quicker.
Moving a little bit quicker.
Move a little bit. I think you move very, very quick, but I think our industry really kind of takes their time getting certain places. I mean, how many certification programs had a remote proctoring option before COVID hit?
Very few.
And how many of them have it now?
Yes.
And do they want to move backwards, mm-hmm. or do they want to move forward? I think that what's happened over the last couple of years has forced the hand on a couple of things. But I've been in some conversations where there's people that are still very concerned about the security aspect of it, and that is an important thing, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's all about the test taker and the candidate, right? And mm-hmm. getting their costs down and giving them more value. And the only way we do it is through innovation. But I would say that, we're absolutely thankful for, the early adopters that helped mm-hmm. us launch both remote proctoring
yeah.
and now, Certiverse, right? Because without customers and without somebody who's who believes in the vision that we have, we wouldn't be here. So,
right.
We're thankful very thankful for you, Todd, and to Barry and team, and for being one of the very early customers on the platform and partners.
As we work together, and that's why our partnership in both remote proctoring and this have been so valuable for us on our side, is because we can talk to you about it. And it's not that there's a terrible thing happening.
Yeah.
It's, hey, you know what? It might be better if we did something with this.
Yeah.
And we may not know what change we need. We just know that, hey, when I try to do this, it's not quite working. But from what we've seen with how quickly you respond to those things and are able to move that bar a little bit and it helps us move forward.
It's with a technology platform and a startup, we build core modules.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, they don't all work. They work, but they may have a feature missing, right? So like for us, it's really important to just iterate quickly. And we recognize that. So part of like our development process for building the technology is we always have a buffer zone to add about 20% buffer zone so that we can add new tickets into the system to resolve things very quickly and to get something out very quickly. And that's one of the things that our customers love about us. But we're not burdened by legacy technology. We don't have we don't have baggage around that stuff, so we can quickly build things.
Yeah, and that is a challenge with legacy technology. Is how do you move beyond it? How do you modify what that is and bring it into today's world, or do you leave it behind and start from fresh? And that's a challenge, and that's one of the reasons why we like what you bring to the market, because it doesn't have that legacy stuff, but it has what we need to be able to move forward.
Yeah, and we love to innovate, and we love to have partners help us innovate as well, because it's not, we don't come up with all this stuff. Our partners tell us.
None of us can do it by ourselves.
We get customers tell us all the time, or they say, hey, you should do this. You should do gamification. Have you thought about this or whatever? And that's how we get a lot of our ideas. It's not like we're like in the back brainstorming stuff.
We're not in a vacuum. We're all working together, and that's the type of partner that I like to work with, and I think that has been very beneficial for our CIW program and ICT is partners like you that are innovative, that we do work well together with, and everybody improves. The candidate has a better experience. The candidate has more opportunities. We as business owners and companies have an opportunity to employ people, and we have the opportunity to make a difference in this world. And that's really what I enjoy. Is I love seeing a candidate that they've gone in, they've taken some of our certifications, they've gone through our process. They'll provide us some feedback too. But I love it when we see them successful in the marketplace, moving their careers forward.
So Todd, I want to just thank you for everything, for your support, but I absolutely want to thank you for your mission and what you're doing both in the academic market, helping bring forward a lot of students, a lot of kids learning about technology, and giving them a path, to understanding what IT certifications are and so forth, and also love what you're doing with your next generation exams around AI. I mean, you have your team has been great to work with, and just your mission has been pretty incredible. So I want to thank you for that, and also obviously for coming on and being a guest and coming all the way from Phoenix too.
I enjoyed it. It's a good trip. It's a good opportunity to be here, and we were talking culture earlier before we started this, and I think that the culture of our two companies works well together, and so I appreciate that from you and your team, because we've not been able to do we wouldn't have been able to do as much as we have without the help of your team. So we thank you very much.
So just really quick, we'll put these links in our show notes, but where can people find you?
CIWcertified.com, ICTcertified.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Todd A. Hopkins, I think is what it is, but we'll get you a link for that. Certification Partners is on YouTube. There's some YouTube videos there, a variety of different places.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Todd, for joining us.
Yep. Thanks, Ruben.